Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 9th Real Good News event. This morning, this evening, we're going to begin with John Gage's song, "The Big Blue Ball" from the Defying Gravity video. You can buy and stream John Gage's songs on iTunes and Spotify and follow John on his Facebook page. And we always love opening with this particular song. Hope you enjoy it. I'll be right back. Thank you to John Gage. We are very happy to have him willing to play his songs on our show. I am Elisa Owen, and I am the Executive Director of Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light. and along with the Christian Action Group of St. Paul United Methodist Church and Real Good News, the Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville, we are sponsors of these quarterly gatherings like tonight, where we learn something new that will help us with the resolution that we helped to pass in front of the Metro Council. But Margaret is going to talk to you about that. So Margaret, why don't you take it away and explain what we're doing here?
Thank you, Elisa, and thanks to each one of you for joining us tonight. I think you'll learn a lot from the program we have ahead of us. I'd just like to add one kind of PS. The video that we just saw was John Gage singing, and I see Rhodey Streeter, who did the video. Thank you, Rhodey, for waving to us. I just want to give him credit because I love the video. Thank you for that. The resolution that we're focusing on is the one that the Louisville Metro Council passed almost 3 years ago, just shy of 3 years ago, February. It was, we're coming up to it, the anniversary. The Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville worked for it at least 2 years, I guess, to get this resolution passed by the council. We're very grateful they did pass it. There are 3 points of the resolution that I will mention quickly, and 3 goals regarding renewable energy here in Louisville. The first one is to reach by 2030 a goal of renewable electricity for all the city operations, whatever the city buildings are and so forth, to have all their electricity by 2030 generated from clean renewable energy. The second goal is by 2035 to have all city operations, and that will include not just buildings, but transportation, to be clean renewable energy. That's by 2035. And by 2040, this is the most ambitious part of the goal, to have the whole city, all residences, businesses, transportation, everything, clean renewable energy. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and scientists around the world have told us how important it is to get as soon as we can, as soon as we possibly can, off of fossil fuels and decrease the carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions. So this is our part where the goals that we have set, our city has helped us to set these goals now. The important thing now is to achieve these goals. Well, one of the means by which we got the Metro Council to pass this resolution in the first place was by encouraging speakers, individual people, to sign up for 3-minute addresses to the Metro Council at each of their meetings, 1 or 2 people sometimes, to speak. You're allowed to speak for 3 minutes. We want to encourage any and all of you to consider doing this. It's really not hard to do. We have a sample we'll show you of one that Sam Avery did not too long ago. We're still, now that the resolution is passed, trying to encourage attention to be paid, money to be found, ways to be found to achieve these goals. So Paul, will you share with us the short 3-minute video of one of Sam's addresses, just to give you all an example of how it can be done.
Thank you.
Samuel Avery.
Thank you. I'm Sam Avery, the Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville, or REAL. How many hurricanes does it take to change a light bulb? As Hurricane Ian was plowing across Florida a month ago, a friend of mine wondered why we had not yet changed our light bulbs to LEDs. How many hurricanes does it take to change a light bulb, he asked. A light bulb brings the light of day into the night. It also symbolizes an idea, a flash of light deep in the spirit of the human mind. Humans are the only form of life on Earth that can think of something that does not exist and then make it exist in the physical world. We come up with new ideas, new light bulbs to replace the old ideas, but there's always resistance from the old light bulbs. I caught a glimpse the other day of a bright new idea for Louisville. Hart County, Kentucky, a county with 2% of our population, is building a large utility-scale solar installation with nearly as much generating power as we need in Louisville to meet the first goal of our renewable energy resolution. Now, I'm not suggesting that Louisville is behind Hart County, but I can tell you that the technology is there, the economics are there, and the entrepreneurial spirit is there for Louisville to produce all of the renewable energy it needs for government operations by 2030, which is the first goal of the renewable energy resolution. We don't have to build the solar field ourselves. We can let a private developer build it and pay for it. And then allow them to bill us monthly for the electricity we use at a cheaper rate than we're paying now. Cincinnati has already begun saving millions of dollars a year through its renewable energy program. As the hurricanes keep rolling in one after another, we will have to go solar one way or another. I think we can do it with LG&E, but I think we're going to need a private solar developer to actually do the construction. The only thing standing in our way are the old light bulbs. Ideas like it's too expensive. LG&E won't let us, or my favorite, entrepreneurs should not interfere in a utility monopoly. And the hurricanes keep rolling in. How many will it take? Thank you.
Yeah, that was just one example. And I want to emphasize that I feel it's really important to have as many diverse speakers as we can approaching this whole issue of renewable energy for our city from any angle that you wish to approach it from. So that was just, it showed you 3 minutes. They limit you. It's not hard to do. We have Sam is coordinating speakers. He will give you more information. Paul, you might post his contact for us. So
It's up
anybody,
there.
oh, it's up there. I didn't see it.
Chat. I just posted.
Okay, in the chat. Thank you. So click on the chat if you want to see how to contact Sam to get more information about signing up to speak, when the dates are that the council meets, typically twice a month. So we encourage you to consider doing that. And unique perspectives are greatly appreciated on that. These talks, I think, have been effective not only in getting the resolution passed, but now we're focusing on implementation. What steps can actually be taken? A resolution is, in this case, words on a piece of paper. And if people are accustomed, just recently we've had the focus on New Year's resolutions. Resolutions often just fall by the wayside and aren't actually implemented. But the concrete steps that we can lay out for ourselves to meet these goals are what will really enable us to actually achieve them. So that's what we're focusing on now. The city has already taken some steps. We're very grateful. One in particular, the city energy manager, Zachary Tyler, for example, has already in his 2 years or less, slightly less than 2 years, I think, in the position for city energy managers, already saved us well over $100,000 for the city. So by working on increasing the efficiency, and he's still hard at work on that. The city's looking at other angles, but tonight we're going to focus on one particular concrete possibility. If you can imagine a solar farm for Louisville, just like Sam was referring to the one in Hart County, Cincinnati has one, is saving a lot of money for the ratepayers and generating a stream of income. So how about let's figure out a way for Louisville to do this too. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Sam to lay the groundwork for our next part of our program here. Thank you.
Okay, better take the mute off here. Sorry about that. Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that. And what we're doing here tonight is we're going to concentrate on how we can actually achieve that 2030 goal. We have 7 years left now. That, as Margaret mentioned, is renewable electricity for all city operations. Now, how much is that? I figure it's the city uses about 100 million kilowatt hours a year. That sounds like a whole lot. It is a whole lot. It's about as much as 8,000 houses would use. And it costs the city $13 million a year. So it's a pretty big goal to do, but this first goal of the resolution is only 1% of the total amount that LG&E actually produces. So by 2030, if we can do this, we'll be well on our way, but we'll have another 99% to work on after that in the 2040 goal. So I'll have something to say about that in a little bit. But so after passing the resolution 3 years ago, the city has taken this seriously. And we, as Margaret mentioned, we have an energy manager, Zach Tyler, who's here tonight. Where are you, Jack? Say hello, Zach. And also
Hello.
Good, there he is. And also the city has studied the possibility of a partial municipalization. We had that as one of our previous topics. The idea there is to possibly set up our own utility for the city so that we can plug into some other form of renewable energy without it actually going through LG&E. That could happen, and maybe Julie Donna later on will speak about that. She's here, and Sumedha Rao is also here. She works for the city, and she's part of the team that's looking into these possibilities. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to actually construct something that can produce enough electricity for city operations? Now, I'm figuring that we're going to need something like 84 megawatts of power, and that amounts to about 200,000 panels, and it would take up 500 to 600 acres. So it's a pretty big use of land, and it's a lot of material. But we have a friend of mine, Rob Calbus, who's going to speak later on tonight, and he just happens to be building in Hart County, Kentucky, a system of about this size. So it can be done. This is not a moonshot. So before I introduce Rob, I want to mention two things. First of all, is how are we going to pay for this? And secondly, what about land use? I mean, that's a lot of acreage. And if this is only 1% of what we're going to eventually need, how are we going to actually do that? As far as the cost of this is concerned, we're going to do this almost always. People are doing this now. Utilities and municipalities are doing it through what's called a PPA, Power Purchase Agreement, which means that the city will go into a contract with a company like Rob's and will get a certain amount of electricity in exchange for a guaranteed income stream, so that the solar developer will build a system, will pay for it, will buy the land, hook it up to the grid, and then charge the city or customers an amount per month for their usage of the electricity. Pretty much the same way we're doing now. The only difference is we think it'll be considerably less than what we're paying now. So the upfront cost is going to be zero, we think, or virtually so. Now, the other problem is there's a huge amount of land going to be used here. And I want to say that I'm worried about that. I don't like the idea of huge amounts of land going up for solar development. But, and here's the big but, I consider this to be an emergency measure. These systems are not permanent. They will be put in, they'll last for 30 to 40 years, and part of the expense, part of the cost that we're going to be paying, or that the solar developer is paying, is for decommissioning. They're actually going to pay for the cost of taking these systems down in 30 or 40 years whenever they have to do that up front. So you can go back in there, you can pull the stakes out of the ground, and you got your field back. So it's not like building roads or paving or foundations or industrial development. It's not a permanent use of this land. And I think that 30 or 40 years from now, we're going to have a lot of different kinds of new technologies which are going to produce a lot more electricity. So I don't think that the land use problem is a permanent problem. And I think because of the timeline we're looking at, because of the reality of the climate situation on this planet right now, we're in an emergency. So we need to get these things built. And then in the longer run, we'll come up with other ways of producing renewable energy. So Rob sent me a long bio and I left it in my phone, which I don't have here. So I'll just have to wing it. Rob is, he's the senior project manager with Leeward Energy. Is it Leeward or you just pronounce it Leeward?
Leeward Renewable Energy.
Leeward. Okay, I can tell you're not a sailor. So I'm a sailor, and if you said Leeward, people would laugh at you out on the boat. It's we'll call it Leeward for now, and it's a company that builds solar and wind installations. And Rob is a convert to renewable energy. He went in initially to the bad guys, the gas and oil people, but he knows a lot about utility construction and about energy in general. And he's going to follow up now with a description of what he's doing in Hart County, Kentucky, and perhaps how that could be adapted to our needs here in Louisville. Rob, take it away.
Well, thanks for introducing me, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It is the rare case that I get to talk to folks who are interested about renewable energy. A lot of times I'm staring out on a lot of faces, a lot of skeptical faces, a lot of sour faces, and sometimes that's not easy to do. So it's great to be here tonight talking to folks who are enthusiastic about what we're doing. So just to give you a little bit more background on me, I'm based out of Indianapolis. I cover a territory for Leeward that spans Missouri all the way to Philadelphia to Hart County, all the way up to the tip of Michigan. And I have a team under me that helps me manage these projects. And one of the years is on the call tonight. That's how Patrick Walsh, you might see his name on there as well. He's working on this project as well. And so as Sam mentioned, I started my career as a petroleum geologist. I saw the light in around 2015, 2016, and came over to the power and utilities specifically to get into renewable energy and start advancing the energy transition. And it is something I'm genuinely passionate about. I think that climate is definitely an urgent need for us to address, but there are also many other benefits that come with rethinking the grid and repurposing technology that we've been using in the IT sector to kind of make the grid more efficient. So I've been at the development game since 2019, looking in this area, and came over to Leeward about 2.5 years ago. And this is one of the first projects that I took on. And so I'm happy to talk to you about it tonight. I'm going to dive right in here to the slides. So I'll start sharing my screen. You know when you can see. Okay. So here we go. So here's a quick agenda. So the first part of this presentation, I'm going to just kind of tell you about who we are, what we do, why we're in Hart County, and kind of our timeline, and let you know that'll give you a good kind of sense of our activities and what it takes to actually build one of these projects. The next part is what I call eye candy. So I can kind of give you a visual sense of the project and mention some of the componentry that or kind of do a deeper dive into that. At any point, please, do interrupt me if there are questions. I'm happy to take questions as we go, unless anyone would prefer that I wait to me. So I'll dive right in here. Is someone going to say something? All right, so who we are. So we are, as I mentioned, Leeward Renewable Energy. We are a Texas-based company. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of OMERS. That is the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System. So we're basically owned by a pension fund. And just as they like to hold stocks and bonds and other securities in their portfolio, they also like to hold infrastructure. And so if you've ever driven across the Chicago Skyway and paid the toll there, you're ultimately paying my salary. That bridge is one of their assets, as is Leeward, which is developing renewable energy facilities across the U.S. And basically has the long cash streams that they like to see to balance out the volatility of, say, a stock portfolio. So, Leeward really has two strands of its DNA. Are one that's owner-operator, who's been in business over 2 decades, that doesn't just lock up the rights to projects and flip them. We actually execute on the opportunity that we create. We build the projects, and then we own and we operate them. Now, that's not to say that occasionally, a project might fit into someone else's portfolio a little bit better. And we will divest in certain circumstances, but by and large, we are an owner-operator out there. We have about, this slide's a little out of date, I think around 2,500 megawatts now of renewable energy capacity. We have projects in various stages of development and multiple projects under construction right now. In fact, there's one missing from this map in Ohio. We're really proud of that one, a 200 megawatt project that is currently under construction, and that's going to be one of our biggest solar facilities in the Midwest. That's about 4 times as big as the project that we have in Hart County under development right now. So moving on here, so everybody wants to know why solar? Why is this happening right now? Well, I don't really have to tell this group that solar is the way of the future. I think everybody here probably believes that, as do I. But I do like to give some background. So right now, on a levelized cost of energy basis, it is one of the lowest cost energy forms out there right now. And so it's and that cost curve has really fallen dramatically over the last several years and is projected to continue plummeting onward. That amazing kind of continual improvement in the technology reminds me a lot of the 90s when computer processors were just obsoleting themselves as soon as they left the manufacturing facility, and we were seeing this tremendous increase in computing power every 6 months or so. It really reminds me of that. That's what's happening in solar. At the same time, we have this tremendous need, and Sam mentioned it very clearly, for lower impact forms of energy. And so, the greenhouse gas benefits are just a part of that. In addition, you have less water use, you have less particulate pollution. So you got this great cost efficiency and need happening right at the same time. So both with some supply and demand drivers that we're seeing out there right now. So, one of the questions I get asked right off the bat is, how does Hart County benefit from having a facility like this? there are impacts. Sam mentioned the land use. We're using 500 plus acres for this facility. That's not trivial. We do think it's a very passive use of the land. By the end of the day, it's not trivial. So what is Hart County getting out of this? Well, they're getting a number of things. So, one right off the bat, there's new tax revenues that come off this. Present value of the additional tax revenue associated with the property improvements could be upward of $1 million for the county. Now there's an IRB, an industrial revenue bond tax abatement program in Kentucky that solar developers are using, and that gives the county the flexibility to spend that money discretionarily. And also move it forward in time. So all that tax revenue can be pulled forward into the first year of operations, and can fund a meaningful capital project, perhaps a project like the one in Louisville, except a little smaller, maybe in Munfordville, solarizing Munfordville, for example, or bringing in EV chargers. There's lots of different things that they can do with that tax revenue to get a quick win. So just to give you a sense of scale, we're increasing the tax coming off of parcels that we're using in this project by about 10 times. So it is quite significant boost. Additionally, there's landowner rents. We don't get use of that land for free. We pay the landowners who own it a very healthy rent in excess of market value, and they have more spending power in the local economy. Additionally, since we do have more economic activity associated with the project, there's additional sales tax and other things of that nature, local spending in the economy, things of that nature. So there is this very tangible economic benefit that comes with the project. In addition to that, we have significant employment opportunities that come from this. So during the construction phase of the project, we're talking about hundreds of temporary construction jobs over the 12 months it's going to take to build the project. So that's a very meaningful contribution to the local labor demand. And so a lot of people point out, well, those are temporary jobs. Well, sure, but if you talk to anyone who's worked in the trades, they'll tell you, well, I've worked myself made a whole career of working myself out of a job, moving temporary jobs. That's the nature of the beast. In addition, we induce jobs, the extra attendant at the gas station, maybe the extra server at the restaurant, things of that nature. We are creating more economic activity in general. And then additionally, we do have some long-term operations and maintenance jobs. And those jobs are few relative to the construction jobs, but they are there. We will employ permanent employees once the facility is operational, who also have a little bit more spending power. Last but not least, community involvement is a huge priority. As I mentioned, we're a developer, owner, operator. We're going to be here for the long term. And so we want to send the message. We make it a priority to engage with the community early and often. And so it's a huge priority to send the message that we're good neighbors. And so we put our money where our mouth is. And so you see things like us sponsoring the local tractor pull in the picture below. This is at the county fair. We were sponsors there. And so these are kind of things that we do. We don't necessarily decide what we're going to do. We let the community tell us what's important and meaningful to them. Additionally, we have two of the three families participating in the project raise cattle, and one of the impacts that's leveled at us is kind of the impact of the local agricultural community. So we decided that we wanted to show that that this is actually a benefit, and one way it's a benefit is, well, the families that are raising cattle there, they're going to be able to continue to do that because they have an additional revenue stream. So for them, they're just diversifying. We're not using all their land. They're going to continue raising cattle on adjacent property and benefiting from this more stable income stream And so just like Lever or Omer's likes to diversify, all of us like to diversify where we're getting our income from, and farmers are just the same. So we put our money where our mouth is by forming a relationship with the Hart County Cattlemen's Association. And this is a dinner where we presented a check for $50,000 to purchase a piece of equipment that they could loan out to their membership. Farmers who couldn't afford to purchase their own equipment, they're going to have access to a new piece of equipment, equipment called a no-till drill. I'd be lying if I said I knew what it did, but they will now have the use of this, and apparently it is something very important to cattle farmers. So these are the kind of things we do. So there are a range of benefits. There's another benefit I didn't put up on here, and another benefit is it says that Hart County is open to business. And what I mean by that is renewable energy is increasingly a part of an ecosystem. And manufacturers are looking to locate their facilities where they can get access to cleaner, lower carbon energy on the grid. And so this facility here, one says, look, a significant infrastructure project can get done in this county. That's a signal in itself to site selection managers. But it's also saying, hey, the right things are here for us, the right ingredients for us to build a facility. For example, the OEM battery supplier going in Hardin County to the north of Hardin, south of Louisville, that's a perfect example. They're not going to be building EV batteries without sourcing renewable energy to power their operations. That would be absurd. And so the manufacturers like that are looking directly to sign PPA agreements with developers like we were and other independent power producers. So these are the benefits here. So those are 4, even though I only have 3 up here. Looks like I've got a question from Roxanne.
Yeah, could you explain the tax revenues again? Did you say that was the present value of the tax revenues over what, 30 years? Is that 5
years? That's correct.
Over 30 years. And what is the source? I don't understand tax revenues. Are you talking about the rates that people are going to be paying for the electricity, or what? Where's the tax come in?
Property tax and property improvements to the land that the facility is going to be located on. So the site is composed of 4 land parcels owned by 3 families. We're leasing the ground, and the property tax that comes off of those parcels is what is increasing by 10 times. And the landowner who is leasing the ground to us, they don't pay that property tax. We pay that property tax. That's a part of our agreement, is that we agree to assume that increase in property tax.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand that. The landowner gets the rent, and you pay the property tax for improvements on the property.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So let's talk about this. This is the economic impact in a little bit more detail. This is the economic impact of not the tax revenue, but the actual economic impact of the project. We commissioned a study from an expert in renewable energy economic development, and these are the findings. And so, the direct, these are the actual construction jobs that we will hire. And so that's the 141. The 300 or close to 300 here. That is the total. So the gas station attendants, the additional the businesses in Hart County that are serving us directly, for example, a seed supplier or aggregate company or something like that. That's what's contained in these other numbers. The 300 is the total. So we're looking at 300 during construction. Similarly, during Operation 7, potentially 4 employees. Okay, so. All right, so let's talk about the site itself. How did we choose? Why here? That's the question, that one of the first questions I always get from a landowner. Why are you here at my farm? What is it about this spot that makes you so interested in talking to me? And so that usually comes maybe a little later in the conversation. The first two questions are usually, how much are you going to pay me, and what happens if you go bankrupt? We'll cover all that, but I'm going to focus on why here, why now. So the first and foremost, the name of my game is to find places where I can get access to the transmission level of the grid. I'm not talking about the poles and wires that you see on the side of the road delivering electricity to your home or to a small business. I'm talking about the large towers you see on the side of the interstate. This is the highway system for electricity. Specifically in this area, it's PJM. They are the grid operator. They are the air traffic controllers that control the flow of electricity in a 14-state region and manage the flow of electricity on the transmission system. So we want access to that market. And so we look for places at a low cost. I have the absolute right to connect to the grid. The question is, can I afford to? Because I have to make sure that that my interconnection is cost neutral to the ratepayers. And so I have to absorb those costs, and those costs fall into two buckets. The first bucket is the direct actual connection to the grid. So we're talking about the breakers, the switches, the transformers, things of that to actually plug into the electrical system. The second bucket of costs is the downstream effects that we create to the system. So by putting my electricity into the grid, am I creating a system overload that would cause the grid to break? If so, what has to be upgraded so it doesn't break? Well, I have to absorb those costs. So a big part of what we do to be successful is we're scouting for the right place. And we believe that the 69 kilovolt line that is passing through Hart County here at a sort of a southeast northwest trajectory is ideal. And to that end, we've studied and we've surfaced those costs. And in fact, our hypothesis turned out to be correct. And so that is why we're here. We want access to that low cost interconnection. Once we have that, the next thing, I have high quality solar resource located on here. Yes, the resource is good. But I'm going to be tomorrow afternoon in northern Michigan, the very tip of Michigan, and I can get it done just as effectively up there. But the resource is a little bit better here. But that's never the limiting factor where I'm developing. But addition to that, we need flat to gently rolling. This is, I'd say, moderately rolling, so we're kind of pushing the envelope here a little bit at this site. Minimal environmental constraints. We don't want to come in here and offset the benefit that we believe we're creating. We want to go where we're not spoiling the environment, where we don't have to, where there aren't sensitive elements to the environment. And then last but not least, we need willing landowners. We can't get this done without people who are willing to give up the rights to their land during the life of the project. We can either purchase or lease property. In this case, we have leased all of the ground, but we have both arrows in our quiver. At the end of the day, we found 3 families that were interested in what we were doing and willing to make a deal with us ultimately. So we leased the ground on a 35-year lease in this case. Sometimes we do this as long as 50. That's actually more typical for us to lease the ground for 50 years. But at the end of the day, at the end of the project, we have to vacate unless we can try another deal. And who knows, cold fusion might be discovered by then. This might just very well be a transition for an energy system evolution. So let's talk a little bit more about this. I want to dive into that process and just talk about the development. And so when I say development, I'm saying everything up to the point of construction. Everything that has to happen to make the opportunity ready to execute on. And so I've covered site selection. The name of the game is low cost interconnection. To kick off that interconnection process, we have to show enough site control that we have to show sufficient real estate rights to be able to build a facility of the size that we intend. So for a 50 megawatt project, that means we have to show 250 acres of site control, 5-to-1. So that was the initial way we got into the queue. We secured the rights to 250 acres. We packaged that up with a couple other required documents like line drawings, and we entered the transmission queue and kicked off that process where the costs of interconnection are studied and the impact to the system is studied. And that's a multi-year process. You can tell we definitely need more than 5-to-1 to build the site. In a rolling area like this, we actually have to go over 10-to-1. It's just 5-to-1 to get into the queue. That's the kind of ante up to play the game. So we are in the final stages of the interconnection process, and we are very excited about what the results that we've seen so far. During that interconnection process, that's when we really begin the site investigation, the due diligence, understand the environmental constraints, sensitivities, and other impacts, potential impacts in the area, and really start understanding what's out there. So we kicked off that process at the end of last year, or the end of 2021. Over the course of last year, we studied the site exhaustively so that we could provide the supporting material needed to permit the project, to begin to file an application with the Public Service Commission's siting board. So the Kentucky Power Siting Board under the Public Service Commission. So we filed that application in October. We've been moving through that process for the last several months. It includes supplementary data requests. We posted representatives from the siting board in the area, and they've asked us, questions and documented their own investigation of the site. And we just got our last supplementary data request on Monday, I believe it was, and we are working through that, and that is really the last kind of bit of kind of analysis that we need to provide to move forward. Now, the next steps from there is a public hearing. We'll cover that a little bit more in the timeline. But once we have that permit and we have those electrical interconnection results, then we really de-risk the project. That's really the name of the game that I'm undertaking here, is de-risking the opportunity. So once I de-risk the interconnection and de-risk the land use, which is basically realized through the certification of the permit, then I'm off to the races. It's very easy to sell the power. So that could be to a municipality like Louisville, that could be to an industrial power user, that could be to a utility. It doesn't really matter. We seek to do business with anyone who has the creditworthiness and ability to purchase electricity in the wholesale markets. So those are our main criteria, as creditworthiness and ability to purchase sufficient quantities of electricity in the wholesale market. That is the power offtake. Once we have that power offtake agreement, that PPA, that power purchase agreement, that's gold to us. That is contracted revenue. And we can take that revenue to our financing partners and raise the capital and ultimately build the project. And so once we do that, construction takes generally, in areas where I'm working, 9 to 18 months. At this site, I anticipate construction lasting 12 months. I'm expecting to kick off construction at the end of this year and be generating electricity at the site by the end of next year. So that's really how we kind of move through one of these projects. Now, what happens after the project? Sam touched on this, and so I'm going to cover this with you tonight. Decommissioning. That is really the second question I get after how much are you going to pay me? People want to know, do I end up with a giant monument to renewable energy in my backyard if you go out of business? And the answer is no. The way that we operate is that we will contract with a landowner to fund a decommissioning bond that will cover the cost of decommissioning of the site, so that they can rest assured that those panels, all the equipment will be removed from the site, and the site will be restored to the condition it needs to be made ready to return to the previous land use. So that's a major feature of our lease agreements. Now, in a lot of cases, what happens is a state or a city or whatever, whoever has jurisdiction over the project will impose their own decommissioning requirements. And so in that case, we'll just go with the more stringent of the two, whether it's the land agreement criteria or the state. Now, I can tell you right now that the state of Kentucky is looking at adopting a regulations on decommissioning, and so we'll see that coming too. You could see it in the state level. Right now, there are no decommissioning standards in the state of Kentucky, and so nonetheless, we do have that. So here's a quick look at what our timeline here. As I mentioned, we started site assessment land acquisition about 2 years ago. Last year, the end of 21, we started field studies, and that really was a big part of last year. And then community engagement. So really going out and getting to know people in the community, explaining our intentions, and trying to find supporters of the project. Because I'll tell you what, not everybody is as excited about the project as all of us here tonight. And so we need to make sure that we show that there are folks in the community that also see this as a good thing, because unfortunately, it tends to be the people who are opposed to these things who are a little bit more energetic and willing to come out and speak their mind. And so every supporter that we can gather, every person that we can show that from Kentucky, from the local county, from the immediate project area who believes in this, we're working to gain their support too, and working to register that support. So in letters of support, in testimony at public hearings, those are the kind of things that we do. So just like Dan is talking, we ask our supporters to come to meetings and give a little 3-minute vignette of why they believe in it. And I think Sam's was fantastic. It's really challenging to get your point across in 3 minutes, let alone inspire someone's imagination. I think that's what Sam did great. You know, he got some great facts out there, but he also inspired people. So that's what we're doing in our community engagement campaigns. We're trying to get them excited about this. We held a public information meeting. We did an open house where we had subject matter experts standing around displays of information and invited the public to come in and ask their questions. Unfortunately, we had a tornado warning in the middle of it, so we had to cut it a little short. And then in October, we submitted our application, and coming up in a couple weeks here, in fact, 2 weeks from today, we have our public hearing in Hart County. So I invite all of you to come down to that and watch this unfold. As I mentioned, you're going to see a lot of folks who are not as excited about this. And so if you do feel compelled to stand up and express your support, I'd be grateful. Nonetheless, it should be a good show either way. We're looking at permit certification at the end of or the middle of April. There is another evidentiary hearing that occurs in the middle. That's more of a kind of a quasi-judicial process that'll happen in Frankfurt. That's not really open to the public as much. I mean, you can go, but it's kind of you're viewing from the peanut gallery rather than being invited to be an active participant. And then, like I said, we hope to once we have that certification, we hope to kick this thing on. So real quick, I'm just going to roll right through this. These are some of the components really that are part of the facility. And please do stop me if you have questions. I'm going to take this pretty quick, and then kind of turn it back to the group here. So let's just take a quick look. So our panels here, this is are mounted on a steel array, and these on strings which run north-south. And so the panels will track the sunlight from east to west over the course of the day. We get a little bit more bang for our buck with that system. So we are planning on installing the trackers now. These trackers will probably have to be pounded or driven through pilots in the bedrock, but for the most part they're held in place by friction rather than, like, say, cement footers. This is an example of a rotating array about high noon, gathering the sun. You can kind of see us installing our collection lines. Collection lines are the electrical AC lines that gather the electricity from the inverters, which are flipping the electricity from DC to AC. These are the gathering lines. These are being trenched in some cases mounted on cable trays strung between panels. Last but not least, this is kind of wiring up the DC from the panels. So we're creating a circuit pulling the electricity that's generated to the inverter at this stage here. There's some solar panels. We all know what solar panels look like at this point. So we haven't decided where we're going to source our technology from, but this is basically what it's going to look like. Then you've got the inverters. I mentioned these are staged throughout the site. These are probably about 15 of these, and these are what are converting the electricity, flipping it from DC to AC. And so that these inverters are staged throughout the array, and are some of the bigger equipment out there. And we have roads to be able to access the maintenance on the panels and the inverters as well. Last but not least, after the electricity is gathered from the inverters, it is gathered to the electrical substation. So we'll have the electricity will be stepped up to the transmission level of voltage and tied into that. We will break the line and tap into it there. And so that's what we'll be doing up at 69 kilovolt substation southwest of the project. After that, I mentioned, the decommission. That's the last thing we do, decommission and restore stuff. So really, that's all I have. I'm happy to take some questions. I will turn the floor.
Yeah, Rob, I have a question. Quick one. We got to move on, but I was just wondering, what's the going price now, wholesale price for electricity from this kind of installation?
Great question. So I think we're looking at about $50 to $60 a megawatt right now.
Okay, so that's about a nickel a kilowatt hour.
That's right. So it's about probably about half what you pay at home. I'm not sure what your home rates are.
In Louisville, we're paying about 12 to 13 cents a kilowatt hour, but that's a retail price, and what we're talking about here is a wholesale price. But even so, it's going to be less. The overall price is going to be less. Okay.
Sorry, Sam, just to jump in on that point, if we use Cincinnati as an example, they wanted to strike their PPA at 3.5 cents. City buildings are paying about 2.9 to 3.5 cents rather than 12. So I guess we've got to square that one, because the city would not want to be paying more than it's probably paying for its bills now.
Well, real quick, so the number that I specified, it includes a capacity stream, which is something I guess you wouldn't be paying. So there's a little bit in there that just comes straight to me from the utility. So that probably brings it down a little bit. And also there is the cost for the REC. You will have the REC, and I don't know what you will ultimately do with the REC, if the city will choose to monetize that, or if they will simply retire the REC. I don't know what the decision would be on that end. But I'd also point out that Cincinnati one, I think, was struck when the market was considerably lower. 2.5 years ago, I came in and PPAs were getting done I mean, we're pushing, sub 30 on PPAs, and the market has moved in the other direction, moved in the other direction in recent years. It's always moving around. I expect.
I guess the point I'm making is if we're talking to the city about these things, we've got to be sure of our costs. I mean, city electricity costs 3 cents or 3.5 cents, not 13.
We can put together a value stack, so you can kind of see the components that go into that, and you can have a little bit more granular look at that. I can give you kind of some analysis on that.
Right. Thanks.
Okay,
Rob,
we have to move on. I'm sorry. We got to move on to our next speaker. And sorry, we don't have time for more questions, but Elisa, you want to introduce our next speaker? Where'd Elisa go?
You're on mute, Lisa.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was here, but on mute. I apologize. So our next speaker is going to be Julie Donna. And she's going to talk to what barriers there may be here in Kentucky to get this great solar array in Louisville. So I'm going to turn it over to her. I will let you know that Julie Donna is the Energy and Climate Justice Organizer for Kentuckians of the Commonwealth. She's focused on building a just and climate resilient Kentucky through collaborative and equitable solutions for all. She has in the past been sustainability coordinator for Louisville Metro government. And prior to that, she was leading new projects for the City of Cincinnati Office of Environment and Sustainability and Green Umbrella and the Regional Sustainability Alliance of Greater Cincinnati. She is a proud graduate of the Neighborhood Institute and the Public Allies Leadership Development Program, and she has a degree in biology and environmental science from Miami University in Ohio. I want to turn it over to her, but before I do, I want to suggest that if you have questions for Rob or Julie, you put them in the chat, because what we can do is have the presenters answer them offline, and we will also know what you still want to know about so that we can answer your questions in subsequent meetings. So don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat. And Julie, you're up.
All right, thank you. And thank you for that introduction. And I'll go through everything I have to go through really quickly, just so that we can have some more time for discussion. And I know a lot of people had some questions for Rob that I'd be interested in hearing the answers for too. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, as they said, I am Julie Donna. I am the Energy and Climate Justice Organizer for KFTC, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. And since I know that everyone's not necessarily familiar with KFTC, we are not a solely environmental or climate organization. We actually have been around for 40 years, and we were actually founded in order to fight the coal companies with the land issues that Eastern Kentucky was facing back 40 years ago. So even though we're not solely focused on climate and energy, it really is deep in our roots as a grassroots organization. So we do work in many other areas. I think most people might know us for our electoral work and our democracy work. And we are very active in those, especially around election time that we just went through that last session. But we have plenty of other work, and we see all of this as very interconnected. And for example, we can't do our climate and environmental work without thinking about racial justice, without thinking of economic justice, and without thinking about how this strengthens our democracy. And just a little more framing about how we see our energy work and see how we can advance climate equity and climate justice and move toward our clean energy goals in Louisville and beyond, all around Kentucky, is seeing this intersection of all the forms of justice that we need to work toward for a full just transition to renewable energy in Louisville and in Kentucky. So we have climate justice, we have energy justice, and we have environmental justice. And those are all very related terms that really mean that we are taking into account the communities that are most affected by pollution and by environmental quality issues, and the communities that are affected by our high energy bills that we have here, and by climate disasters and flooding. And we are prioritizing them and putting them at the forefront of the solutions that we're developing. So I know that it's kind of harder to think about those solutions in terms of when it comes to Louisville Metro's initial goal of 100% clean energy for city operations. But as our previous speaker talked about, there's solutions with incorporating community input, having that input early on in the process, and having community benefits that are incorporated into the solutions that we are working toward. And that will only strengthen the solutions that we're finding. And then just another little framing of how we're thinking about this. We want to be reducing our energy burden, alleviating energy insecurities and energy poverty. And of course, with a solar farm in Louisville, if we are potentially saving money in the long run, we can be having money from our energy bills go toward other programs and solutions that are working for the whole community. And so I always start with, and especially at KFTC, we always start with power mapping. And so especially this really helps us to find the challenges, as Elisa talked about, that we might have in implementing this solar farm and reaching our clean energy goals. So who holds the power in Kentucky's utilities? So we are working, us in Louisville are working under an investor-owned utility, LG&E, which is owned by the shareholders and makes decisions with taking the shareholders into account, and of course is regulated by the Public Service Commission. Then we've also got, it won't let me move forward. Okay, we've got municipal-owned utilities, which are owned by the city governments. And that's just something to bring up because the Louisville Metro, as many of you know, have issued a study to kind of start looking at what partial municipalization might be and what that might look like, and how we might be able to work around LG&E and the policy landscape that we're working in. And then, of course, just to note, there's also cooperatively owned rural electric co-ops that are all around Kentucky, and mostly in the less urban areas that are controlled by LG&E and KU and our other investor-owned utilities. So in just framing this, you know, the PSC regulates LG&E. Louisville Metro is not a real producer of electricity. We are the customer. And Louisville Metro, as a city, is one of the largest customers of LG&E, but that is where the power begins and ends. And really, LG&E sees Louisville Metro as one of the larger institutional customers, just as they do U of L, or for the KU, UK, and other institutional entities that have actually built some utility scale solar through LG&E already. And I welcome lots of conversation, and I want to have a lot of discussion afterwards, but just to take into account that LG&E is a vertically integrated utility. So, Louisville Metro has to work through them and, often works through multiple purchasing institutions that are all being negotiated at once, which is not an easy feat. And of course, as we heard from the earlier speaker, there's a lot of other things to take into account, and LG&E would need to find, a solar contractor to work through, and all of the land ownership issues, construction and development issues. And there's a lot of people and a lot of entities that have to all come to an agreement at the negotiating table. Louisville Metro would depend on the information that LG&E is providing. And a utility scale solar development won't necessarily be local, so there won't necessarily be the jobs developed specifically in Louisville or for low-income residents to utilize. But I think the most important thing that I want to talk about is the political will to enter the negotiations. And we really need just Louisville Metro elected officials to see the possibilities, because while I worked at the city of Cincinnati in our Office of Environment and Sustainability, our mayor at the time, Mayor Cranley, really wanted to get a solar project completed, and that was how we got that done in the city of Cincinnati, which is now under construction, and it's amazing after years and years of so much work. But it really all started when Mayor Cranley was driving down the highway and looked into an open field in the greater Cincinnati area and said, I think we could have the largest municipally owned solar development right here. And he saw that vision, and it was something that he then became dead set on developing that. And although a lot of the work came from the energy manager, Michael Forrester, there, and the whole team there, and it was years and years of negotiating and looking at all the intricacies, when it really came down to it, if they were getting stuck or if we encountered a problem, when the mayor was behind it on such a strong level, we would call up the mayor and say, hey, can you give a little more oomph to this issue? Or, oh, we really need an answer from this person by this deadline. And when they get a call from the mayor, they typically give an answer. So just seeing the possibilities from the elected officials, from everyone in the community, that really can advance and this effort and really try to really make it happen. And make it happen at the rate that we need it to happen, because we need to be going 100% renewable energy as soon as possible, as we all know. And I'll also challenge us to say, not just think of this as a renewable energy project, but really every kilowatt we save through energy conservation and efficiency is a kilowatt that we don't need to build for a solar farm, and a cost that we don't need to accrue. So that is something that I encourage us to never forget about. And there's also a major opportunity in the Inflation Reduction Act. This is something my team at KFTC and our allies have really been diving into, and seeing what are the possibilities that we can implement locally, either through the local government or through our communities and nonprofits coming together to apply for these funds, or even ensuring that the State Energy Office is going after these funds so that they can redistribute to our communities here in Louisville and locally across Kentucky. So I'll just, not go into this in depth at all, but just want to say that there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of funding that is, I'll go to this next one, a lot of funding that is going out from the federal government at a very fast pace. And this is kind of fairly unprecedented by the federal government to be distributing these funds this quickly. But this is something that has a lot of possibility and is huge for our climate movement and our advancement of clean energy here in Louisville. So there's a lot of funding that we need to be able to go after, and there's it is not going to take just the local government administration to go after these funds, because there is a huge amount, and we just need to encourage our elected officials to partner with outside or non organizations that aren't climate organizations that are improving disadvantaged communities, and bring in the possibilities that we can make this a climate program. We can be building solar farms that also have local benefits, and that this is something that we need to push for today. So I'll encourage everyone to be ready to partner with Louisville Metro and with our fellow community organizations. And I'll also share about a project that KFTC has been working on for the past year or so, and that is a climate deep canvassing project. And we were wanting to build relationships and really inspire hope and build public support for what it will take to have a just transition to clean energy in Kentucky. And this was a wonderful project that I got to take part in, and it was really going door to door, knocking on doors, and just approaching the conversation without necessarily bring up climate change initially, to kind of destigmatize the conversation and not have it be polarized. And the results were that 69% of the people that we talked to in Louisville were very concerned about the climate. So when we're looking for, whether it's 100% real or other community groups, when we're looking for people to go and talk to council, or when we're looking for people, you know, there's people all over that not only care about climate change, but have been affected by it. And so that's something that there are people all over that can be ready to take action on this. And just a reminder that there are other local solutions besides a solar farm, that when you're talking to people about climate change and about the possibility for a solar farm, getting them excited about talking to Metro Council about the possibilities of solar energy. Not necessarily everyone might connect to a utility scale solar development. So there's a lot of other possibilities that we could talk about, but they're all interrelated, and they're all going to be getting us toward at least our larger goal. And that is what I have for us today. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion as much as we have time for. And there's my contact information. And I'll also drop the link for the climate stories in the chat.
Wow, Julie, that was great. We really appreciate you giving that as quickly as you could, and we're sorry that you had to do that. I know that there have been a couple of questions that have come in, and one of them is, number one, does anybody have to have matching funds for IRA money? That was one question. And another question was, what do you know about the stance of Mayor Greenberg toward renewable energy? In other words, do you think we can look for an ally in him? Why don't you answer that question, and then we'll see where we are on time.
Yeah, and I'll point to, it looks like Sameda preliminarily answered Jean's question about discussions with the new Greenberg administration. But I will say that, you know, with a fresh new administration, there is a lot of possibility. And, you know, something that is big and bold, like a utility scale solar development for Louisville Metro, is the perfect thing to be really a hallmark of the new administration. And I also have heard things that, Mayor Greenberg is now much more supportive for clean energy, and really just seeing the big picture of like the real transformation that we have to make. So, so I personally am also very hopeful and excited. And of course, it will be a long road ahead of us, but we have a lot of possibility there and a lot of fresh new energy, and something else that, of course, with some new Metro Council members already, emphasizes even more the possibility that we have to go and speak to council and contact our elected officials and really make it known that we do want this to happen, and we want our just transition to clean energy, and that they should make it a priority for their new term or new administration.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Are there, Sam, do you see a question or two that we could entertain and in the next 2 minutes?
Yeah.
In the chat?
I got one. George Perkins asked this one, and I think Rob might be able to tackle this.
Yep.
What are the statutory differences between Cincinnati, Hart County, and Louisville that determine the feasibility of a PPA solar project? Can you bite off that one, Rob?
Really, nothing is going to be any different in any of those. Well, I would say I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to state law about transacting a contract like that. But really, there's nothing fundamentally different about the electricity markets or the regulatory framework of electricity.
Well, I believe Cincinnati is not subject to any state control of their utility decisions.
And I can speak to that a little. So yeah, when Cincinnati was in the midst of our negotiations for the utility scale solar development there, that was owned by the city could go out and just search for their own solar developer, and really, that took a lot there. They had to develop a solar consultant and partner with them to help us develop all the other RFPs to find the ideal solar developer. Whereas Louisville Metro would have to go through LG&E, who then LG&E would find a solar developer. So that's the difference, is really just that Louisville Metro is tied with LG&E, and whereas Cincinnati does not have a vertically integrated utility and has a real open market that anyone can contract with.
But I think it should be said that if we can't find LG&E to do this for us, we need to find somebody else to do it for us. And there are ways to do that. But we have to take this into our own hands and not just say, LG&E won't let us do it. We just can't do that. We have to say, this is a democracy, and if they won't do it, we'll find somebody who will.
Will we have a time for one more question for
Yeah, go ahead,
Rob
Roger,
or
real quick.
Steve? Well,
Yeah.
I put it in the chat, but it's how does one calculate the maximum solar megawatt hour capacity for a particular grid or utility like Louisville and LG&E without overload in minimum load situations and without the use of battery storage? So in other words, when does solar become too much for the particular grid that it's put on, or the system that it's put on? I know you talked about system overload before, and I don't know if that's the right term or not, but.
So let me be clear. So I work at the transmission level of the grid. And so anything I say pertains only to the transmission level of the grid, not the distribution layer of the grid. So the transmission level of the grid, really, there is such little solar penetration on that level of the grid right now that we are a long way off from some of the problems that you might see, down the line. We're so far away from the solar being an issue there. Now, California, you are getting solar curtailments, but one, we don't have the same solar resource here in the Midwest, and two, we don't have anywhere near the penetration. So I think we have a ways to go. In the meantime, battery energy storage is coming to the fore. And
Right.
to help move that energy in time and really help shift that energy to the time of the day when it's needed best. And so we're already seeing a cost curve kind of tracking the solar cost curve for the long term coming down on battery energy storage projects. I can tell you I'm actively out there developing battery energy storage projects, and I wouldn't rule out the potential to piggyback on the Hart Solar facility and a second energy.
Rob,
But it makes sense then not to build out the maximum utility or maximum solar while you still have the gas and coal power plants, and then follow up and then see where you are and then follow up with as they decommission the gas and coal plants, follow up with the more solar and more battery. In other words, do that ahead of the game, try to max out your the solar that you can.
I'm going to punt on that question because I think that the energy system is more than just engineering efficiency and economic efficiency. There's also a social element to that, and that's for all lessons. And really, you know, maybe we take a little bit less economic or engineering efficiency so that we can solve a social problem. And I think there's a lot of people on the demand side of the equation really see a sense of urgency being driven by
indeed, indeed. And a lot of those people have been with us this evening, and we appreciate so much you being with us tonight. We did record tonight's program, so you will be able to see it on the Real Good News recordings. They're available on the Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light YouTube channel as soon as we download them. So we will post a link if you would like to revisit something that either of these speakers said. We want to thank both of our speakers. We had a long program tonight, and we hope that it was informative. And we will try to, if you want to write me with a question and I can get an answer for you, I will certainly try to do that. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for discussion, but that will be at the next Real Good News event. We hopefully will have more time for discussion on this and other things. And that will probably be sometime in April. So we need to go ahead and end our program to keep within our time that we promised. But again, we appreciate you being here. We're going to let John Gage have the last word on our discussion tonight. Thanks, everyone, so very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoy the honor, the opportunity to sing for you. And I also take away a lot of inspiration. Thank you for all you do to make it better. And this next song I wrote a whole bunch of new verses, John Gage version of a wonderful Holly Near piece that she sort of created almost impromptu at a rally somewhere. And it's beautiful and simple, and I hope it gets everybody singing along. I repeat each line twice. So. We are strong and gentle people. We're singing for our lives. We are strong and peaceful people. We are singing for our lives. Standing up as one for this good earth. We're standing up for life. Standing up as one for this good earth. We're standing up for life. We are singing for our children. We are singing, singing for their lives. We're singing for our children. We're singing, singing for their lives. We hold a vision for the future. We are holding, holding on for life. We hold a vision for the future. We're holding, holding on for life. We're singing for the air we breathe. We are singing, singing for our lives. We're singing for the air we breathe. We are singing, singing for our lives. Determined to reduce our carbon footprint. We're singing, singing from our hearts. Determined to reduce our carbon footprint. We're singing, singing with all our hearts. We are people of resolve. We're resolved to have clean energy. We are people of resolve. We're resolved to have clean energy. We are singing to Metro Louisville. We're singing, singing for our lives. We are singing for Metro Louisville. Let's make the change to clean energy. We are strong and gentle people. We're singing, singing for our lives. Thank you.